All right, well, congratulations on the film and welcome to Dallas.
Thank you for having us.
You know, I was thinking about this film and the journey that it took, not only your life journey, but the journey to get this film made, just the process and how daunting it must have been. Has it been such a relief to finally be able to show this to people?
I guess in a way it is, but in a way it's also miserable. You know, it's not fun having to relive this over and over and over. I always tell people the only thing I can compare it to is imagine the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life and then having to watch it over and over and talk about it over and over and constantly, you know, rip yourself back open and expose that, and you never get a chance to really heal. But at the same time, I mean, the good aspect of it, the thing we're looking at is this is what it's going to take for us to finally get a sense of closure. You know, the state of Arkansas, according to them, they're finished. They're not going to do anything else on this case. So it's up to us to let them know we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep talking about this until you do finally do the right thing. So if we do ever want to have that sense of closure, then this is what we do now.
Do you feel like you're getting that sense of closure? Do you feel it coming?
I think it's going to be a long, long, hard fight. Just like getting out of prison. You know, it took 18 years. And I don't think this is going to happen in a single day either, but I think with every single audience member that watches this documentary and that feels something about it, and that asks a friend or that tells a friend you should watch this, that brings us one step closer to that sense of closure.
Good. Well, I mean, the whole campaign itself has been proof that people can change things and bring light to a subject and do something about it. And in the comments that I've read, a lot of people, you know, hadn't heard about the case until someone like Johnny Depp or Eddie Vedder had said something about it. So, you know, this it seems like this is the right path, even though it seems like a painful one.
It's one of those things that people think just because you have, you know, evidence that points toward your innocence that the case is automatically over. And that's not the case. You know, the truth is that's only 50% of the battle. The other 50% is getting the outside world to care, getting someone to look at the case, getting someone emotionally invested in it, making them want to do something. And that's what those guys have been so good at doing. You know, Johnny and Eddie and Henry Rollins and Natalie Maines from the Dixie Chicks, Margaret Cho. You know, they've been sort of tireless in getting word out there, bringing recognition to this case. And if not for that, I'd still be in prison right now.
So what has regular life been like to adjust? Because, you know, just in the internet age alone, there's a lot to catch up with. And this isn't a question you get to ask many people. So I mean, what is it like coming into this, and how have you helped with all this?
I think I'll let him speak to the technical internet, the iPhone part of it, but I think what no one expected was the trauma and just the psychological damage and the physical damage that Damien had endured in prison, and how that was going to affect him in the world. And none of us knew what to do. I mean, we immediately put him on a plane and flew him out to Seattle, and we were at Eddie Vedder's home for a little while, and we're all kind of sitting around thinking, you know, are we going to break them? Are we, you know, are we going to hurt them? And it took a long time for us to realize what he had been through and how to care for him. So I think that's been one of the biggest transitions for me.
You know, not only had I been in prison for 18 years, I'd been in solitary confinement for almost a decade before I got out. So I wasn't used to any sort of human interaction at all. So that alone, I mean, to say it's overwhelming doesn't even come close to articulating it. For the first 2 to 3 months that I was out, I was in a state of shock and trauma so deep that I couldn't do anything for myself, by myself. I had to have someone with me all the time. And then you take into consideration other things, like it's not only the technology, but you're having to learn old things and new things at the same time. I hadn't walked anywhere without chains on my feet in almost 20 years. So I had to learn to walk again. When I first get out, I'm tripping down stairs, tripping over my own feet whenever I'm trying to walk. You don't have silverware in prison. That would be considered a weapon. So you're learning to use stuff like that again. in addition to that, you're also, just learning to navigate. I've been in a concrete box for almost 20 years. I never went anywhere, and now all of a sudden I'm having to find my way from place to place in the world. Stuff like that causes crippling and crushing amounts of anxiety and fear, and sometimes even despair that you have to work your way through. The technology, before I went into prison, I hadn't seen a computer since 1986. And it was basically a giant glorified typewriter for rich people. It wasn't like it is now where everybody has laptops and everybody has smartphones. And so, when I first walked out of prison, somebody handed me a phone and a computer. And I'm still not that great with the computer. I can use the phone now, but even the first few weeks when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, there is no way I'm ever gonna be able to figure out how this thing works. It does all these weird random things, and a lot of times I can't even figure out how to answer it when someone's calling. You get used to that pretty quick though. It's not as mind-blowing as you think it would be. When you're in prison and you hear about this technology, it seems almost like magic to you. You're like, wow, I can't believe there's something out there that does that. Then when you actually get your hands on it, you're like, it's vaguely interesting for a few minutes, and then it becomes life as usual.
Has there been something really fun to discover?
I think it's just a whole new culture, a whole new way of life. Before I went into prison, I'd been raised, in really small places in the South my whole life. I'd never even really seen a real city. And as soon as I get out, we go to New York, Manhattan, the city. So you're there and you're looking around, and if I would have just went straight from Arkansas to New York, that in itself would have been a huge culture change. But going from prison and solitary confinement into New York City was something else entirely. It was like you just feel this huge tidal wave of energy crash over you, and it's something that you love. It's one of those things when really it sounds crazy, but sometimes you get so overwhelmed you just want to sit down on the sidewalk and start writing love songs to New York, just because that's how amazing and magical it is. It can get to be too much over time though. At first it was like I was starving and trying to take it all in, and then I started to feel like I'd eaten a whole lot of something really bad and wanted a break for a while. There's been, it's not any particular thing. It's just that. It's just how much the world has changed, how much people's views have changed, how much society has changed in 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. But part of that is what's helped you. So it's kind of an interesting.
Exactly.
Now, with this film, I know that there's a lot of information out there, and in fact, there are the other documentaries and plenty of stories. What is it about this that you wanted to convey that the others didn't reach?
This film started out as an answer to the courts who wouldn't hear our new evidence. When we tried to present it, the new DNA evidence, the new forensic science evidence, new witnesses that had come forward, Judge Burnett denied our appeal in 2007. Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson, who had been on board since 2005 helping with the case, literally a part of the legal team, at that point felt, well, if the courts aren't going to hear the new evidence, then let's do a film and put it out to the world that way. And so it started out as doing basically an investigation and working with the documentary film director, Amy Berg, whose background was investigative journalism. And so it did start out as being an investigation, and what it ended up being is what we would have put on in the hearing that we eventually did win, that was scheduled for December of 2011, I think. So that was the evolution of how this film came about.
And the other two, how much interaction do you have on a regular basis with them?
Not much. From what I've heard, Jesse Miskelly, he only had an IQ of 68 to begin with. Then you add all the trauma and everything else that come from this situation on top of that, and they pretty much made sure he will never live anything even close to a normal life. From what I've heard, he never left Arkansas. He will not come out of his house. He doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't talk to anyone. He's become a shut-in. They say he's completely terrified that they're going to put him back in prison for something, and he doesn't really have any coping skills or defense mechanisms or anything else that's going to allow him to survive in the world. Jason lives in Seattle now. We went there as soon as we were released, and he loved it so much he decided that's where he was going to live. That's where he wanted to call home. We talk about once a week or so. He's in college right now. What he eventually wants to do is get his law degree and maybe be able to help people who are in the same situation that we were in.
That's great. And was it really nice to see everyone in Toronto, or was it a little bittersweet?
Oh, that was fun. Yeah, that was one of those things. I had no idea how big that was going to be, Toronto, until we get there. And I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't ready for it at all. I'm thinking it's going to be like Sundance or something. And then we had Johnny Depp with us, which also made it, an even bigger thing. But I honestly don't think I could have gotten through it without him. Having somebody there that's used to that and that treats it as like, oh, this again, and can just walk through it without losing their cool or panicking or anything else, that was a huge factor in what made that so successful and what made me able to handle that sort of situation, just having him there with us.
Did he give you any kind of advice, or did anyone give you some special advice that you think, okay, well, I
was telling Lorri this morning what Johnny says to us all the time is slow down. He said when everything around you starts getting more and more hectic and faster, keep slowing down. As fast as everyone else moves, you slow down even more, because that gives you a chance to think the situation through, to not make any sort of mistakes or screw up or anything else. You just have to force yourself to step outside of everyone else's energy and move on your own, and that has been a huge help.
Yeah, it probably helps with a tour like this. I mean, it's an interesting way to see the country, but it's also probably pretty, like you said, overwhelming.
Yeah, and absolutely exhausting. We've been on the road for about 2.5 months now.
Yeah.
I had a book come out in September called Life After Death. So we were doing the book tour for that, and we've been doing public speaking, book signings, things like that. And then now we're sort of just transitioning almost seamlessly into the west of Memphis, getting the word out about that. So it's really almost like it's been one long tour. It's not even like it's separate. So it's been it's been a really odd experience.
Yeah. Can you talk about the book a little?
Most of the book, I published a book in September of this year called Life After Death. About 85% of it I wrote while I was in prison. The other 15% I wrote when I was out. A lot of it while I would write in prison was really cathartic for me. It would help me work through situations that I was going through, but it was also a way of maintaining memories, maintaining sanity. For example, I'd been in for almost 20 years, so it got to the point where I knew before I went into prison that pizza had been my favorite food, but I couldn't remember what it tasted like anymore. So I would write about things that I did remember and write about them every single day and write about them from every angle and every perspective that I could think of, almost like I was trying to engrave those things into my mind so that I wouldn't lose them the way that I had started to lose so much of my previous life. It had gotten to a point where I was 18 when I went in and spent 18 years in, so literally half my life. And I had reached a point where I literally could no longer imagine what life would be like outside those walls. I couldn't see it anymore. And writing for me was one of the things that helped me get through that and helped me try to remember what it had been like before and sort of try to project some of those memories into the future, things that I wanted to experience sometime down the road.
And what has it been like meeting everyone? Because, I mean, like you said, you weren't dealing with a lot of human interaction, and now you have a lot of people that want to talk to you, lines of people that want to talk to you.
It can be overwhelming. Like when we're doing the book signings, we've had anywhere from like 400 to 600 people show up to do book signings, and that's how many people you're talking to and dealing with on a nightly basis. And it's really odd because people come up and they tell you all sorts of stories. They give you all sorts of gifts. And it can be really touching, it can be humorous, and it can be downright bizarre. Sometimes like this woman comes up to me one day, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but she comes up and she gives me this painting that's a painting of me, but from the waist down I'm a horse, like a centaur. And you could tell she spent a lot of time studying photographs because like all the tattoos are in the right places and everything. But you're looking at it and you're thinking, what is this? So it can be odd at times too.
Yeah. Well, and even more bizarre, there's now a film, I guess, being made where someone is playing you, a sort of narrative. And what do you make of that?
Well, that we really don't have anything to do with it. We've tried to stay as far away from it as we can. It's not very accurate. It's we've read the script for it, and it's just really bad writing, and it's not anything we support at all. As a matter of fact, we are completely and absolutely against it. You know, just for example, Lorri probably did 85% of the work in this case, more than the attorneys and investigators put together. She was the driving force in this case, yet she's not even in the movie. Instead, they've taken like a fringe character that had very little to do with the case, didn't really have anything at all to do with us eventually getting out, and he's the one they sort of turned into the hero of the story, and so it's not good.
Yeah. Well, last thing about this film. So, what is the big takeaway that you want people to get from this? Because there's so much to take in, and it's wonderful for everybody to get this information. But what do you think it is that someone's going to go, okay, get this?
There are so many things we want this film to convey, but I think one of the most important ones is for someone coming into the film who's not aware of the state of our justice system. This film lays out pretty much all of the problems that exist in our country today. Politics and money driving prosecutors and judges, all of the problems with different types of gathering evidence and the way that it's put on in trials. So if we can educate our country, the rest of the world, about the plight of the United States justice system, in this case, certainly, so that we can exonerate Jason, Jesse, and Damien, but also so perhaps we can start to change the way things are being done.
Just the fact that we try to keep in mind this film won't affect only this case. We keep in mind that every single person in the audience who watches this movie is a potential jury member who can make sure the same thing doesn't happen to somebody else. That, and also we didn't want this to be something that people came away from feeling down, feeling like, you know, my God, the world is a messed up place. We live in a completely broken society. That's not what we wanted people to come away with. We wanted people to come away from it with a sense of hope and a feeling of inspiration. And we wanted them to come out of the theater thinking, man, I really want to do something with my life.
Yeah. Well, coming from you in the situation you've been through, that I'm sure will mean a lot to a lot of people. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
And thanks for coming to Dallas.
Thank you for having us.